My son forced me to apologize to his rich wife because I'd upset her. When I refused, he yelled, "Say sorry or get the hell out of my house." I agreed, looked her in the eyes and said something in front of everyone that made them both regret it. Their fancy life collapsed in seconds. Let me tell you how I got to that moment. Let me tell you about the son I raised and the woman who turned him into a stranger. And let me tell you exactly what I said that night that made their perfect world crumble. Before we continue, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to hear my story. If you're comfortable, let me know where you're listening from, and what time it is where you are. Now let me tell you my story. My name is Evelyn Carter. I'm 70 years old, and for 42 of those years I was a pediatric oncology nurse at Metropolitan Children's Hospital. I spent my career caring for sick children, babies with leukemia, toddlers with brain tumors, teenagers losing their hair to chemotherapy. I held their hands during painful procedures. I wiped their tears and their parents' tears. I worked double shifts, overnight shifts, holiday shifts, because those children needed someone who cared more about them than about going home on time. I'm also a widow. My husband Thomas died 7 years ago from a heart attack. Sudden, devastating, life-changing. We'd been married 38 years. He was a good man, a postal worker who never made much money but who loved his family fiercely. When he died, he left me with grief, memories, and a small life insurance policy that I used to pay off our house. And I'm a mother. I have one son, Marcus. He's 45 years old now, and for most of his life, he was everything I could have hoped for in a child. Kind, respectful, grateful, loving. When his father died, Marcus was 25 and just starting his career. We became even closer after Thomas passed. Marcus would call me every single day, visit every Sunday for dinner, fix things around my house, bring me flowers on Mother's Day. We had a relationship I treasured. I raised Marcus mostly on my own, even when Thomas was alive. Thomas worked long hours at the post office, and I worked long hours at the hospital, but we made it work. We lived modestly in a working-class neighborhood. We didn't have much money, but we had love. We had stability. We had each other. When Marcus went to college, I worked extra shifts to help pay for what his scholarships didn't cover. I drove the same beat-up car for 15 years, so he could have reliable transportation at school. I ate simply so he could eat well. I made sacrifices quietly, the way mothers do, without keeping score or expecting credit. After Thomas died, those sacrifices intensified. The funeral costs and hospital bills left me with debt I hadn't expected. I worked 70-hour weeks for 2 years to pay everything off while still helping Marcus finish his final year of college. I never complained, never made him feel guilty, because that's what you do for your child. Marcus graduated debt-free. He got a good job in marketing, worked his way up, and eventually became a VP at a tech company making around $180,000 a year. Good money, comfortable life. I was proud of him, so proud. For years after college, Marcus remained the son I'd raised, attentive, present, caring. He'd take me to dinner on my birthday, include me in his life, introduce me to his girlfriends. We had a relationship built on mutual love and respect. And then 3 years ago he met Vanessa Martin. I'll never forget the first time Marcus brought her to meet me. He called me a week before, excited and nervous. "Mom, I've met someone special. I really want you to meet her." "Of course, baby. Bring her over for Sunday dinner." "Actually, Mom, would it be okay if we met at a restaurant instead? Vanessa's she has particular tastes. I just want everything to be perfect." That should have been my first warning sign. My son had eaten Sunday dinner at my house his entire life and never had a problem with it. But suddenly my home wasn't good enough. Still, I agreed. We met at a nice restaurant in an upscale neighborhood. I wore my best dress, a modest but clean outfit from Macy's. I arrived on time. Marcus and Vanessa arrived 15 minutes late. She was beautiful, I'll give her that. Tall, elegant, with perfectly styled hair and a designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly pension. She carried herself like royalty, back straight, chin high, eyes assessing everything and everyone. Marcus introduced us. "Vanessa, this is my mother, Evelyn. Mom, this is Vanessa Martin." Vanessa extended her hand like she was granting me a favor. "Mrs. Carter, Marcus has told me so much about you." Her handshake was limp, brief, dismissive. We sat down and ordered. The conversation was stilted from the start. Vanessa dominated, talking about her work as a lawyer at a prestigious firm, her family's connections, her education. She name-dropped constantly, judges she knew, cases she'd won, places she'd traveled. When she finally asked about me, it felt perfunctory. "So Mrs. Carter, Marcus mentioned you were a nurse." "Yes, for 42 years, I worked in pediatric oncology at Metropolitan Children's Hospital." "Oh, how noble. Service professions are so important." The way she said service professions made it sound like I'd been mopping floors. "And you're retired now?" "Yes. 7 years ago." "And you live?" She let the question hang. "In the same house my husband and I bought 35 years ago. It's paid off now, small but it's home." "How nice," she said, in a tone that suggested it was anything but nice. The dinner continued like that. Vanessa asking questions that felt like interrogations, making comments that sounded like compliments but felt like criticisms. It must be nice to live so simply. I'm sure nursing was rewarding in its own way. Marcus really rose above his circumstances, didn't he? That last comment made my blood run cold. Rose above his circumstances. Like being raised by working-class parents was something shameful. Marcus didn't defend me. Didn't correct her, just smiled and changed the subject. After dinner, Marcus walked me to my car. "So what did you think?" I chose my words carefully. "She's very accomplished." "Isn't she, Mom? I think she might be the one." "Marcus, you've only known her 2 months. When you know, you know. Just take your time, baby. Make sure you really know who she is." He kissed my cheek. "Don't worry, Mom. She's perfect." But she wasn't perfect. She was poison. And over the next 3 years, I watched that poison slowly destroy my relationship with my son. Marcus proposed to Vanessa after 6 months of dating. Fast, but he was in love and I wanted him to be happy. I had concerns. Serious concerns. But I kept them to myself. I'd raised my son to make his own choices. I had to trust that. The wedding planning started immediately, and that's when I really saw what I was dealing with. Vanessa took complete control of every detail. When I offered to help, she smiled that cold smile and said, "Oh, Mrs. Carter, thank you, but my mother and I have everything under control. We have a very specific vision." I'd saved $15,000 to contribute to my son's wedding. It represented 3 years of saving, of working extra shifts, of careful budgeting. I wanted to give Marcus something meaningful, the way Thomas and I had dreamed of doing. When I presented the check to Vanessa and Marcus, Vanessa looked at it like I'd handed her Monopoly money. "Mrs. Carter, that's sweet. But the wedding budget is $85,000. My parents are covering most of it. Your contribution wouldn't really make a noticeable difference." I felt my face burn with shame. Marcus looked uncomfortable but said nothing. "I just wanted to help," I said quietly. "And we appreciate the thought." "Really?" Vanessa's tone made it clear the conversation was over. I kept the check, used it later to buy Marcus a down payment on his first house. He never knew where that money came from. The wedding planning continued without me. I wasn't consulted about the venue, the flowers, the menu, the music. I found out about decisions after they were made. When I asked if I could give a mother of the groom speech, Vanessa said, "We're keeping the speeches limited to the wedding party. We don't want the reception to drag on." I wasn't included in dress shopping or cake tasting or any of the activities that mothers and daughters-in-law traditionally do together. Vanessa's mother, Dr. Patricia Martin, was involved in everything. I was an afterthought. The wedding itself was beautiful. Elegant. Expensive. Everything Vanessa wanted. I attended as essentially a guest. During the reception, Vanessa's father, Judge Raymond Martin, gave a long toast about family legacy, and how proud he was that Vanessa had married a man with such potential. Dr. Patricia Martin gave a toast about how much she loved her daughter and how blessed Marcus was to join their family. No one mentioned me. The woman who'd raised Marcus alone. The woman who'd worked herself to exhaustion to put him through college. The woman who'd sacrificed everything so he could have opportunities. I sat at a table in the back and cried quietly into my champagne. My friend Dorothy, who'd come as my guest, squeezed my hand. "That girl is trouble, Evie. And your son is blind to it." I wanted to believe Dorothy was wrong, but deep down I knew she wasn't. After the wedding, things got progressively worse. Marcus's weekly visits became bi-weekly, then monthly, then every few months. He was always busy with Vanessa's social calendar, dinners with her colleagues, events with her family, charity galas. fundraisers, country club gatherings. I was never invited to any of it. When I did see Marcus, Vanessa was always there, controlling the conversation like a director managing a play. If I mentioned my nursing career, she'd interrupt. Speaking of healthcare, Marcus, did you tell your mother about that health policy case I'm working on? She'd then talk for 20 minutes about her work while my stories went unfinished. If I mentioned the old neighborhood or anything from Marcus's childhood, Vanessa would wrinkle her nose. I don't understand how people live in areas like that. The property values are so low. The schools are struggling. It's really quite sad. Marcus never defended me. He'd change the subject or make excuses. She doesn't mean it like that, Mom. You're being too sensitive. That's just how she talks. But I knew exactly how she meant it. Vanessa looked down on me, on my house, on my neighborhood, on my career, on everything about me, and Marcus was letting her get away with it. Worse, he started adopting her attitudes. He began criticizing things he'd never cared about before. Mom, this neighborhood really is going downhill. Have you thought about moving somewhere safer? Mom, maybe you should dress up a bit more when you come to our place. Vanessa's friends are pretty fashion conscious. Mom, you said ain't in front of Vanessa's parents. Can you be more careful about your grammar? Each comment felt like a small betrayal. My son was ashamed of me, ashamed of where he came from, ashamed of the woman who'd sacrificed everything for him. Dorothy noticed the change too. She'd known Marcus since he was a baby. That boy is not the same person anymore. She said one day over coffee at my house. Vanessa's got him twisted. He's trying so hard to fit into her world that he's forgetting where he came from. He's just trying to make his marriage work, I said, defending him even though my heart was breaking. By disrespecting his mother? That's not how marriage works. That's not how life works. Pastor Glenda Morrison, who'd known our family for 20 years, pulled me aside after church one Sunday. Evelyn, I've noticed Marcus hasn't been bringing you around much. Is everything okay? He's just busy with his new life. Busy is one thing. Absent is another. Have you talked to him about how you're feeling? I don't want to cause problems in his marriage. Baby, you're not causing problems. You're his mother. You deserve respect and inclusion. Don't let that girl push you out of your own son's life. But that's exactly what was happening. Vanessa was systematically pushing me out, and Marcus was letting her do it. The breaking point came on my 70th birthday. 70 is a milestone, a big deal. I'd been looking forward to it for months, not because I cared about the number but because Marcus had promised we'd celebrate. Just you and me, Mom, like old times. I'll take you to that nice Italian restaurant you love. I was so excited. I got my hair done, bought a new dress, made plans for the whole day. The morning of my birthday, I woke up to a text from Marcus. Morning, Mom. Happy birthday. That was it. No phone call, just a text with an emoji. I waited all day for him to call with details about dinner. At 5 p.m. I texted him, "Hi baby, what time should I be ready for dinner tonight?" An hour later he responded, "Oh Mom, I'm so sorry, Vanessa has this work thing tonight, and I have to go with her. Can we reschedule? I promise we'll celebrate soon." I stared at that text for 10 minutes, tears running down my face. My son had forgotten my 70th birthday. Or more accurately, he'd chosen Vanessa's work event over his mother's milestone birthday. Dorothy came over when I called her crying. She held me while I sobbed. "That's it. You need to confront him. This has gone too far. I don't want to make trouble. Evie, he forgot your birthday. Your 70th birthday. That's not something you stay quiet about." But I did stay quiet. I didn't want to seem needy or demanding. I told myself he was busy, that he'd make it up to me, that things would get better. They didn't get better. 2 weeks after my forgotten birthday, I saw photos on Facebook. Marcus and Vanessa had thrown a huge party that same weekend. For Vanessa's colleague's birthday, there were 50 people there. Catered food, a DJ, decorations, everything. So Marcus hadn't been too busy to celebrate a birthday. He'd just been too busy to celebrate mine. That hurt worse than anything. It wasn't that he'd forgotten, it's that he'd chosen Vanessa's friend over his own mother. I called him the next day. "Marcus, we need to talk." "What's up, Mom?" "You forgot my birthday." Silence. Then, "I didn't forget, Mom. Things came up. I'm sorry. I'll make it up to you. You said we'd have dinner, just the two of us. You promised." "I know, and we will, soon, I promise." When, Marcus? When is soon? I don't know, Mom. Things are really busy right now. Vanessa's got this big case and I'm supporting her and I'm your mother. Don't I deserve some of your time too? His voice got defensive. You're being unfair, I'm doing the best I can. Are you? Because from where I'm standing it looks like I don't matter anymore. That's not true and you know it. Then prove it. Make time for me. Visit me. Call me more than once a month. Act like I'm still part of your life. Mom, I have to go. Vanessa's calling me, we'll talk about this later. He hung up, and later never came. 3 weeks went by with no word from him. No call, no text, nothing. I finally swallowed my pride and texted him, "Hi baby, just checking in. Hope you're well. Love you." He responded 6 hours later. "Hey Mom. All good here. Busy with work. Talk soon." Talk soon? Always talk soon. But soon had become a lie. I was resigned to our new distant relationship when the invitation arrived. A thick, cream-colored envelope with my name handwritten in elegant script. Inside was an invitation to a dinner party at Marcus and Vanessa's townhouse. I was surprised. Vanessa had never invited me to anything before. I called Marcus. "I got your invitation." "Great. Yeah, Vanessa really wants you to come. It's kind of a big deal. We're having some important people over. Vanessa's colleagues, my boss, some family friends. Please say you'll be there." There was something in his voice. A nervousness, like he was reading from a script. "Of course I'll be there. What should I bring?" "Just yourself, Mom. And maybe wear something nice. It's a pretty formal dinner. Something nice." Like my clothes weren't normally nice enough. But I pushed the hurt aside. At least I was being included. At least they wanted me there. I didn't realize I was being set up. I didn't realize Vanessa had a plan. I was just happy to see my son. I should have known better. The dinner party was on a Saturday evening. I spent all day preparing. I went to the mall and bought a new dress. Nothing fancy but nice. Black, modest, appropriate. I did my hair and makeup carefully. I wanted to look presentable for Marcus's important guests. I arrived at their townhouse at exactly 7 p.m. as the invitation specified. The townhouse was in an expensive neighborhood I'd never been to. 3-story brick building with a manicured front lawn and a shiny black door. Marcus had done well for himself. I was proud, even though I knew my contribution to his success was never acknowledged. I rang the doorbell. Vanessa answered, wearing a designer cocktail dress that probably cost more than my monthly pension. She looked me up and down, and I saw the judgment in her eyes. "Mrs. Carter, you came." Not hello or welcome or so glad you're here, just acknowledgement that I'd shown up. "Of course, honey. Thank you for inviting me." Come in." I stepped inside and immediately felt out of place. The townhouse was stunning. High ceilings, hardwood floors, expensive furniture, artwork on the walls. Everything screamed money and taste. The other guests were already there, holding wine glasses and chatting in the living room. I recognized some of them from Marcus's wedding. Vanessa's parents, Judge Raymond Martin and Dr. Patricia Martin, were holding court near the fireplace. Several well-dressed people I didn't know were scattered around the room. Marcus came over immediately. "Mom, you made it." He hugged me and for a moment I felt like my son was back. But the moment passed quickly. "Let me introduce you to everyone." He led me into the living room. Conversations paused as we entered. I felt all eyes on me, assessing, judging. "Everyone, this is my mother, Evelyn Carter. Mom, this is everyone." Vanessa appeared at Marcus's elbow. "Let me do proper introductions, Marcus." She proceeded to introduce me to each guest with the same dismissive tone. "This is Evelyn Carter, Marcus's mother. She was a nurse. She's retired now." Every introduction emphasized was a nurse, like it was something embarrassing. Like I'd been doing something shameful for 42 years. When she introduced me to Simone and David Richardson, Vanessa's colleagues from her law firm, Simone said politely, "A nurse? That must have been rewarding work." Before I could respond, Vanessa interjected. "Evelyn worked at a public hospital, Metropolitan Children's Hospital, not one of the prestige institutions, but still." The word "still" hung in the air like an insult. Dr. Patricia Martin, Vanessa's mother, approached me with a patronizing smile. "A nurse? How wonderful. We need more people willing to work in service professions. It takes a special kind of person to do that work." The condescension was thick. She said, "Service professions, the way someone might say sewage worker," acknowledging it's necessary but clearly beneath her. Judge Raymond Martin asked, "Which hospital did you say? Metropolitan Children's?" "Yes, sir. I worked there for 42 years. Ah. His interest immediately faded. Not one of the major research hospitals, but I'm sure it served the community well. I wanted to tell him that Metropolitan Children's Hospital was one of the best pediatric oncology centers in the state, that we'd saved thousands of lives, that serving the community meant saving dying children, but the judge had already turned away to talk to someone more interesting. Marcus appeared with a glass of wine for me. "Here, Mom. You look like you could use this." He wasn't wrong. I felt like I was being examined under a microscope, by people who'd already decided I wasn't worth knowing. We moved to the dining room for dinner. The table was set beautifully, fine china, crystal glasses, cloth napkins, candles. Vanessa had arranged the seating so I was at the far end of the table, as far from the important guests as possible. I was seated between an empty chair and Lauren Price, one of Vanessa's younger colleagues who spent the entire dinner on her phone. At the head of the table, Vanessa held court. Marcus sat to her right, and Marcus's boss, Dr. Kenneth Brooks, sat to her left. Dr. Brooks was a distinguished-looking man in his 50s, and it was clear Marcus was nervous having him there. This dinner party was as much about impressing Marcus's boss as it was about anything else. The meal was served in courses. Fancy food, that looked beautiful but left me hungry. The conversation flowed around me without including me. People talked about cases and deals, and investments and vacations to places I'd never been. I ate quietly, feeling invisible. This was what my relationship with Marcus had become. I was physically present but completely irrelevant. Then Vanessa started telling a story, and that's when everything changed. "So I'm working on this medical malpractice case," Vanessa said, her voice animated. She loved being the center of attention. "The plaintiff is claiming that the hospital's negligence during a cardiac procedure resulted in permanent complications. My job is to prove the hospital followed proper protocol." Everyone at the table was listening intently. Vanessa was good at commanding a room. The procedure in question was a thoracic central line placement. Very routine. The plaintiff claims the line was placed incorrectly, causing a pneumothorax, a collapsed lung. Now the defense is arguing that pneumothorax is a known risk of the procedure, occurring in approximately 15% of cases even when done correctly. I listened carefully. Thoracic central line placement. I'd assisted with that procedure hundreds of times during my career. Vanessa continued, embellishing her story to make herself sound more knowledgeable. The placement requires inserting the catheter through the subclavian vein, threading it carefully through the superior vena cava, and positioning the tip at the junction of the superior vena cava and the right atrium. It's incredibly precise work. She said this with the confidence of someone who'd read about the procedure but never actually seen it done. Then she made an error. A significant error that anyone with actual medical experience would catch. And the real issue is that the doctor failed to properly inflate the balloon at the tip of the catheter before threading it through. That's what caused the trauma to the vein wall, and ultimately the pneumothorax. I blinked. That was completely wrong. Thoracic central line catheters don't have balloons. She was confusing them with Swan-Ganz catheters, which are used for entirely different purposes. This wasn't a small mistake. It was a fundamental misunderstanding of the procedure she was supposedly an expert on. I hesitated. Should I say something? Correct her? I didn't want to cause a scene. But the nurse in me, the woman who'd spent 4 decades learning and teaching proper medical procedures, couldn't let such a significant error go unchallenged. I spoke quietly. Actually, that's not quite how that procedure works. The table went silent. All eyes turned to me. For the first time all evening I had everyone's attention. Vanessa's face froze. Excuse me? I'm sorry, I'm just saying, thoracic central line catheters don't have balloons. I think you might be confusing them with Swan-Ganz catheters, which are balloon-tipped and used for pulmonary artery pressure monitoring. They're different procedures entirely. You could have heard a pin drop. Vanessa's voice turned to ice. I wasn't asking for your input. I know, you thought you'd correct me? In front of my colleagues? In my own home? I didn't mean to correct you. Marcus jumped in, panicked. Mom, maybe let Vanessa finish her story. But the damage was done. Vanessa couldn't continue her story because she knew I was right, and she was wrong. The medical professionals at the table, Dr. Brooks, Dr. Patricia Martin, Hospital Administrator Sarah Chen, all recognized that I'd corrected a significant error. Vanessa's carefully crafted image of medical expertise had just been demolished by just a nurse sitting at the far end of the table. She recovered quickly, pivoting to a different point in her story, but the energy had shifted. She'd been exposed as someone who talked confidently about things she didn't fully understand. And she knew it. For the rest of dinner, Vanessa's responses to me were curt, cold, dismissive. The other guests tried to ignore the tension, but it hung over the table like a storm cloud. After dinner, we moved to the living room for coffee and dessert. I was standing alone by the window, looking out at the city lights, when I heard voices from the kitchen. The door was slightly ajar, and Vanessa's voice carried clearly. Your mother embarrassed me. She didn't mean to. I don't care what she meant. She made me look stupid in front of my colleagues. In front of James Whitfield, who's deciding on my partnership. She undermined me. Vanessa, please. No. She needs to apologize, right now, in front of everyone, or she can leave. My stomach dropped. She wanted me to apologize, for being right, for stating a medical fact. I heard Marcus's footsteps approaching. He came into the living room looking stressed. Mom, can I talk to you for a minute? We stepped into the hallway, away from the other guests. Marcus looked at me with an expression I didn't recognize. Shame mixed with determination. Mom, you need to apologize to Vanessa. I stared at him. For what? For correcting her in front of everyone. You embarrassed her. Marcus, I didn't mean to embarrass anyone. She made a medical error and I corrected it. That's all. I don't care what your intention was. You need to make this right. Just apologize and we can move on. I'm not going to apologize for telling the truth. Mom, please, don't make this difficult. I'm making this difficult. Your wife is demanding an apology for something that wasn't wrong. Just do it. Mom, say you're sorry. It's not that hard. I looked at my son, really looked at him and saw a stranger. When had he become someone who valued his wife's pride over his mother's integrity? No. His jaw clenched. Mom? I said no, Marcus. I'm not apologizing. Vanessa appeared in the hallway, arms crossed, face cold with fury. So, is she going to apologize or not? Marcus turned to me. Mom, Vanessa is waiting. I heard. And I'm not apologizing. Vanessa's voice rose. You disrespected me in my own home. In front of my guests. You made me look foolish. I corrected a factual error. That's not disrespect. That's accuracy. You should have kept your mouth shut. Why? Because you're too proud to be wrong? Vanessa's face flushed with rage. Marcus stepped between us. Mom, that's enough. Enough? I've been enough for 3 years, Marcus. I've stayed quiet while your wife insults my home, my career, my life. I've stayed quiet while you stopped calling, stopped visiting, stopped treating me like I matter. And now you want me to apologize for stating a fact?
Marcus exploded.
You're being ridiculous. Vanessa asked for a simple apology and you're turning this into a whole thing. Because it's not about the apology, it's about respect. Something your wife has never given me and something you've stopped giving me since you married her. Our raised voices carried into the living room. I could hear conversations stopping. People were listening. Vanessa's voice shook with rage. I will not be spoken to this way in my own home. Marcus, handle this, now. Marcus turned to me and the look in his eyes broke my heart. This was not my son. This was a man I didn't recognize. He raised his voice so everyone in the house could hear. Say sorry or get the hell out of my house. The silence that followed was deafening. Every single guest was now watching from the living room doorway. Vanessa's parents, Marcus's boss, Vanessa's colleagues, everyone. I stood very still, looking at my son, the boy I'd raised alone. The man I'd worked 70-hour weeks to put through college, the child I'd sacrificed everything for. And something inside me broke. But in that breaking, something else crystallized. A clarity, a resolution, a decision. If my son wanted an apology in front of everyone, I'd give him one, just not the way he expected. I took a breath and felt 42 years of nursing experience, of caring for dying children, of seeing real suffering settle into my bones. I dealt with parents losing children. I dealt with life and death situations. I could handle this. Fine, I said calmly. I'll apologize. Marcus looked relieved. Vanessa looked victorious. But I'll do it properly. In front of everyone. Since this became public, my apology should be public too. Vanessa smirked. Fine by me. Everyone, please come to the living room. The guests filed back in, looking uncomfortable but unable to leave. This was better than reality TV. Marcus and Vanessa stood together, arms crossed, waiting. I stood alone in the center of the room. Pastor Morrison's words echoed in my mind. Sometimes standing up for yourself is the most Christian thing you can do. Dorothy's voice, don't let them disrespect you. And my late husband Thomas from years ago, Evie, never apologize for being right. I looked at Vanessa, really looked at her, this woman who'd stolen my son, this woman who'd treated me with contempt for 3 years, this woman who'd demanded an apology for having her ignorance exposed. And I made my choice. I would apologize. But not the way they expected. Vanessa, I began, my voice clear and steady. I apologize. Vanessa nodded, satisfied, but I wasn't done. I apologize for not speaking up sooner. For 3 years I've watched you treat me with condescension and disrespect. I stayed silent because I didn't want to cause problems for my son. But tonight you demanded an apology for me correcting a medical error you made. And that's where I draw the line. Vanessa's smile faded. Marcus looked panicked. Because you're not just wrong about that medical procedure, you're wrong about a lot of things. And since we're being public about apologies, let me be public about some truth. Mom, don't, Marcus tried to interrupt. No, Marcus, you told me to apologize in front of everyone, so I'm apologizing. In front of everyone, I'm apologizing for letting you both believe things about me that aren't true. I turned to address the room. Vanessa introduced me tonight as Marcus's mother who was a nurse. She said it dismissively, like being a nurse was nothing special, like I was just someone who emptied bedpans and followed doctor's orders. Dr. Patricia Martin shifted uncomfortably in her seat. But what Vanessa didn't tell you, probably because Marcus never told her, is exactly what kind of nurse I was. I looked at Sarah Chen, the hospital administrator. I'd seen her name on the guest list and recognized it immediately. She worked at Metropolitan Hospital's administrative level. Mrs. Chen, you might know this. Where did I work for 42 years? Sarah Chen's eyes widened. She knew exactly who I was. Her voice was respectful when she answered. You worked at Metropolitan Children's Hospital, Mrs. Carter, in the pediatric oncology unit. That's right, I said. Metropolitan Children's Hospital. For 42 years I cared for children with cancer, babies with leukemia, toddlers with brain tumors, teenagers losing their hair and their hope to chemotherapy. I held their hands during painful procedures. I helped them through surgeries. I wiped their tears and their parents' tears when they got bad news. I worked double shifts, overnight shifts, holiday shifts, because those children needed someone who cared more about them than about going home on time. The room was completely silent. Even Vanessa had stopped smirking. But I wasn't just a nurse. In my 25th year I became head nurse of the pediatric oncology department. I supervised 40 nurses. I trained hundreds of medical students and residents, many of whom are now department heads themselves. I developed 3 protocols for pediatric cancer care that are still in use today at Metropolitan and 5 other hospitals across the state. I looked at Sarah Chen again. Mrs. Chen, would you mind sharing what happened when I retired? Sarah spoke clearly, her voice carrying to everyone in the room. When Mrs. Carter retired 7 years ago, the hospital board voted unanimously to rename the pediatric oncology wing in her honor. It's now called the Carter Wing. She's one of only 3 staff members in the hospital's 90-year history to receive that honor. Marcus's face had gone white. He didn't know this. I'd never told him because I didn't raise him to brag. I'd raised him to value substance over status. I received the Lifetime Achievement Award from the National Pediatric Nurses Association. I continued. I was featured in 2 medical journals for my work on improving survival rates in pediatric cancer patients. I've spoken at 12 national medical conferences about pediatric oncology nursing protocols, and I did all of this while raising my son alone after my husband died of a heart attack when Marcus was 25 years old. I looked directly at Marcus. You don't remember most of this because you were in college and starting your career when it happened. I never told you because I didn't raise you to brag about accomplishments. I raised you to value hard work over titles, to value substance over status, to value character over credentials. I turned back to Vanessa. So when you introduced me tonight as just a nurse and dismissed my medical knowledge, you weren't being rude to some ignorant old woman. You were being disrespectful to someone who has literally forgotten more about medicine than you'll ever learn from reading case files. Dr. Kenneth Brooks, Marcus's boss spoke up from his seat. Mrs. Carter, I had no idea. Your work in pediatric oncology is legendary. I've read your protocols. They're still being taught. James Whitfield, the senior partner at Vanessa's law firm, was staring at me with recognition dawning in his eyes. Carter, Evelyn Carter. My daughter trained under you during her pediatric rotation at Metropolitan. She still talks about you. She says you were the best teacher she ever had, and the reason she went into pediatric medicine. I nodded. Amanda Whitfield, brilliant young doctor. She's doing wonderful work now. Vanessa looked like she'd been slapped. Her father, Judge Martin, looked uncomfortable. Her mother, Dr. Patricia Martin, was staring at me with new eyes. But I wasn't done. Not even close. And since we're being public about truths, let me share something else. Vanessa, do you remember when I offered to contribute $15,000 to your wedding? Vanessa's face tightened. Yes. And do you remember what you said to me? She didn't answer. You said my contribution wouldn't make a noticeable difference because your wedding budget was $85,000. You made me feel like my money was worthless. I looked around the room. Do you all know where that $15,000 came from? I saved it by working extra shifts for 3 years. 3 years of working overtime. 3 years of coming home exhausted. 3 years of missing family events and holidays, because I wanted to give my son something meaningful for his wedding. And you looked at that check like it was an insult. Like my sacrifice meant nothing. Marcus's eyes were filling with tears. But what you didn't know, what Marcus didn't know, is that I used that $15,000 for something else. When Marcus and Vanessa bought their first house, they needed help with the down payment. An anonymous donor gave them $20,000. That was me. That money came from my retirement savings, from the extra shifts I worked, from the sacrifices I made. Marcus's face crumbled. Mom, I didn't know. Of course you didn't know. Because I didn't tell you. Just like I didn't tell you about a lot of things. I looked at Vanessa's parents. Judge Martin, Dr. Martin, your daughter has spent 3 years making comments about my humble neighborhood and my simple lifestyle. She's implied that I'm poor, uneducated, lower class, that Marcus rose above his circumstances by marrying her. Dr. Patricia Martin had the grace to look ashamed. But let me tell you about those circumstances. I bought my house 35 years ago for $42,000. I paid it off in 15 years by working double shifts. That house is now worth $280,000. It's completely paid for, no mortgage, no debt. I raised Marcus in that house. I put him through 4 years of college in that house. I paid off his student loans from that house. I saved for his wedding from that house. I gave him the down payment for his house from my house. I looked at Marcus. Do you know how I put you through college, Marcus? You had scholarships. Yes, but scholarships don't cover everything. Your scholarships covered about 60% of your costs. I covered the rest. His face was pale. He knew some of this but not the full extent. I worked 70 to 80 hours a week for 4 years. I took every overtime shift available. I worked holidays, weekends, overnight shifts that paid premium rates. I ate ramen noodles so you could eat in the cafeteria. I drove a 15-year-old car so you could have reliable transportation. I wore the same clothes for years, so you could dress well. My voice cracked slightly. When your father died, we had hospital bills and funeral costs. $28,000 in debt. I paid it all off in 2 years, while still helping you finish your senior year of college. I worked 70-hour weeks. I came home so tired I could barely stand, but I never complained. I never made you feel guilty, because that's what mothers do. We sacrifice quietly, without keeping score. I looked at the guests, then back at Vanessa. So when you talk about service professions with that condescending tone, you're talking about a woman who served dying children for 42 years. When you mock my humble neighborhood, you're mocking the house I bought with my own money after working my way up from nothing. When you judge my clothes and my speech and my life, you're judging someone who built everything she has through hard work and sacrifice, not through inheritance or privilege. Judge Martin was staring at his hands. Dr. Patricia Martin had tears in her eyes. The other guests looked stunned. And Marcus? I turned to my son, my voice softer now but still firm. You asked me tonight if I would apologize to your wife. Here's my apology to her, and to you. I apologize for letting you both believe you were better than me. I apologize for staying quiet when Vanessa disrespected my career, my home and my life. I apologize for not telling you to defend me when your wife insulted me to my face. I apologize for not teaching you better boundaries in marriage. Marcus was crying openly now. Mom, please. But most of all, I continued, I apologize to you, Marcus, for something specific. I apologize for raising you to be kind, respectful and grateful, and then watching you become someone who yells at his mother to get the hell out of his house because his wife's ego was bruised by a factual correction. The room was so quiet I could hear people breathing. I apologize for thinking that my love and sacrifice would be enough to keep you from becoming the kind of man who values his wife's pride over his mother's dignity. I apologize for believing you were better than this.
Mom, I'm so sorry. Marcus's voice broke.
I know you are, baby. But you made your choice tonight. In front of all these people, you chose Vanessa's wounded pride over your mother's respect. You yelled at me, threatened to throw me out, demanded I apologize for being right. And that tells me everything I need to know about who you've become. I picked up my purse from where I'd set it on a side table. Vanessa, you got your apology. I hope it was worth it, because that's the last thing you'll ever get from me. I turned to the guests. I'm sorry you had to witness this. I'm sorry your dinner party was disrupted. But since it became public, the truth needed to be public too. I started toward the door. James Whitfield stood up quickly. Mrs. Carter, wait. Please. I paused. He approached me with genuine respect in his eyes. I want you to know that my daughter speaks about you often. She says you saved her career. She was ready to quit medical school during her pediatric rotation because she felt overwhelmed and inadequate. You took her under your wing. You taught her not just medical skills but compassion. You showed her what it means to truly care for patients. She's a pediatric oncologist now because of you. He extended his hand. It's an honor to meet you, and I'm sorry you were treated disrespectfully in this house. We shook hands, then Sarah Chen stood up. Mrs. Carter, the hospital board still asks about you regularly. Your legacy at Metropolitan is enormous. The Carter Wing has one of the highest survival rates for pediatric cancer in the country, and that's built on the foundation you established. She came over and shook my hand as well. You're a legend at Metropolitan. Everyone who works in pediatrics knows your name. I'm honored to meet you properly, and I'm ashamed of how you were treated here tonight. Then Dr. Kenneth Brooks, Marcus's boss, stood. He looked at Marcus with something like disappointment. Mrs. Carter, Marcus never told me about your background. If he had, I would have made a point to meet you properly long ago. Your work in pediatric oncology is remarkable. He shook my hand. And Marcus, we need to talk. Monday morning. My office. The tone of his voice made it clear that conversation wasn't going to be pleasant. Marcus had just been disrespectful to his mother in front of his boss. That wasn't going to be overlooked. One by one, several other guests came forward to shake my hand or express respect. The only people who remained seated were Vanessa, her parents, and Lauren Price, Vanessa's sycophantic colleague. Judge Martin looked uncomfortable. Dr. Patricia Martin looked ashamed. Vanessa looked like she wanted to disappear. I walked to the door. Marcus followed me, his face wet with tears. Mom, please don't leave like this. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Can we talk? I turned to look at my son. Not tonight, Marcus. Tonight I need to go home, to my humble house in my humble neighborhood. And I need to think about whether the son I raised still exists somewhere inside the man who just threatened to throw his mother out. Mom, I didn't mean. Yes, you did. You meant every word, because Vanessa wanted you to mean them, and you chose her wants over my dignity. I opened the door and stepped out into the cool night air. I heard Marcus say my name one more time, but I didn't turn around. I got in my car and drove home. The drive back to my neighborhood took 20 minutes. 20 minutes of tears streaming down my face. 20 minutes of replaying the evening. 20 minutes of grieving the son I'd lost and the relationship we'd had. But underneath the grief was something else. Something solid. A sense of rightness. Of standing up for myself. Of refusing to be diminished. I'd spent 3 years making excuses for Marcus and Vanessa. 3 years staying quiet to keep the peace. 3 years accepting less and less respect because I was afraid of losing my son entirely. But tonight, I'd drawn a line. I'd said, this far and no further. I'd chosen my dignity over their approval. And while it hurt terribly, it also felt right. I got home to my modest house and immediately called Dorothy. She answered on the first ring. Evie, how was the dinner party? Dorothy. You won't believe what happened. I told her everything. Every word, every revelation, every moment. When I finished, she was silent for a long moment. Then she said, "Baby, I am so proud of you. So proud. You stood up for yourself. You told the truth. You didn't let them make you small. I feel like I just lost my son." "No, you just showed your son who he was becoming. And now he has a choice. He can continue being that person, or he can remember who his mama raised him to be. But either way, you did the right thing." "It hurts, Dot. I know, baby. I know. But you know what? You can hold your head up. You have nothing to be ashamed of. Nothing." After I hung up with Dorothy, I sat in my living room for a long time. Just thinking, processing, feeling. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "Mom, please call me. I need to talk to you. I'm so sorry. Please." I didn't respond. I wasn't ready. Over the next several days, Marcus called and texted constantly. I didn't answer. I needed time, space, distance to think clearly. Dorothy came over every day to check on me. Pastor Morrison called to offer support. My brother-in-law, Harold, called to say he'd heard what happened from Marcus and that he was proud of me for standing up for myself. On the fourth day, my phone rang from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Mrs. Carter, this is James Whitfield. I hope you don't mind me calling. I got your number from the hospital directory." "Mr. Whitfield, hello. I wanted to follow up with you about the dinner party. Specifically, I wanted you to know what happened afterward." I sat up straighter. "What do you mean?" "After you left, the party dissolved immediately. Everyone was uncomfortable. People made excuses and left within 15 minutes. But before I left, I pulled Vanessa aside for a conversation." "Oh?" "I told her that what I witnessed was completely inappropriate. The way she treated you. The way she demanded an apology. The way she spoke about your career and your contributions. I told her it reflected very poorly on her judgment, her character and her professionalism." "I see." I also told her that I'd be discussing the incident with the other partners at our firm. "We're currently considering her for partnership, as you probably know. But character matters. How people treat others, especially people they consider beneath them, says everything about who they really are." I didn't know what to say. "Mrs. Carter, I want you to know that my daughter Amanda speaks about you at least once a month. She credits you with teaching her not just how to be a good doctor but how to be a good human being. You taught her that every patient deserves dignity and respect, regardless of their background or circumstances. That lesson has shaped her entire career. Amanda was a wonderful student. I'm so proud of what she's become. She'd love to see you again if you're open to it. She asks about you regularly. I'd like that very much." After we hung up, I sat with that information. Vanessa's partnership was in jeopardy. Her reputation had taken a hit. All because she demanded an apology she didn't deserve, and I'd given her the truth instead. That same afternoon, Dorothy came over with news. "Girl, the gossip is spreading. Everyone who was at that party has been talking. Word is getting around about what happened. Is that good or bad?" "It's good, because people are taking your side. They're saying Vanessa was disrespectful and got what she deserved. They're saying Marcus should be ashamed of himself. They're saying you were a class act who handled a terrible situation with grace." I wasn't sure how I felt about being the subject of gossip, but at least the truth was getting out. A week after the dinner party, Marcus showed up at my house unannounced. I saw his car pull up and my first instinct was to not answer the door. But he was my son. I had to at least hear what he had to say. I opened the door. He looked terrible. His eyes were red and puffy. He'd lost weight. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "Mom, please. Can I come in?" I hesitated, then stepped aside. He came in and we sat in my living room, the room Vanessa had judged as too humble for her standards. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Marcus broke down completely. "Mom, I am so sorry. I'm so incredibly deeply sorry, for everything, for how I treated you, for how I let Vanessa treat you, for yelling at you, for threatening you, for becoming someone you don't even recognize." I stayed quiet, letting him speak. "I've spent this week thinking about everything you said, about who I used to be and who I've become. And you were right, about all of it. I became someone I'm ashamed of. Why, Marcus? Why did you let it happen?" He wiped his eyes. "I was so desperate to fit into Vanessa's world. Her family is wealthy, educated, connected. I felt like I wasn't good enough. Like I had to prove myself constantly, and part of proving myself meant distancing myself from anything that reminded me of where I came from. Including your mother. Including you. And I'm so ashamed of that, Mom. Because you're not something to be ashamed of. You're someone to be proud of. You built an incredible career. You raised me alone, you sacrificed everything, and I thanked you by treating you like an embarrassment. Yes, you did. He flinched at my words, but they were true. Vanessa and I have been fighting constantly since that night. She's furious at you for humiliating her, but I'm furious at her for demanding that apology in the first place. For treating you the way she did. For making me choose between her and you. And what choice did you make? I chose her. In that moment I chose her. And I hate myself for it. What about now? He took a shaky breath. Now I'm choosing differently. Vanessa and I are separated. She moved out 3 days ago. We're probably getting divorced. I wasn't sure how to feel about that. I didn't want to be responsible for ending their marriage, but I also couldn't pretend I was sad about it. Marcus, I don't want you to leave your wife because of me. It's not because of you, Mom. It's because that night showed me who she really is, and who I became when I was with her. She doesn't respect you. She doesn't respect the work you did. She doesn't respect the sacrifices you made. And if she can't respect the woman who raised me, then she doesn't really respect me either. What did your boss say? Marcus grimaced. Dr. Brooks called me into his office Monday morning. He told me that what happened at the dinner party was deeply concerning. He said that a man who would disrespect his own mother in front of colleagues and superiors shows a fundamental character flaw. He told me I'm being monitored and that my behavior will be taken into account for future promotions. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. I deserved that. I deserved all of it. Mom, I was horrible to you. And you were right to call me out. We sat in silence for a moment. Can I tell you something? Marcus asked. Something I never told you? Of course. After Dad died I was so angry. Angry at the world. Angry at God. Angry that I'd lost my father right when I was starting my life. And I took that anger, and I channeled it into success. I told myself I'd become successful enough, wealthy enough, important enough that nothing could hurt me again. But that's not how life works. No, it's not. I achieved the success. I got the good job, the nice house, the impressive wife, but I didn't feel any better. I just felt empty, and I started resenting reminders of the life I came from, because that life involved pain and loss. He looked at me with tears in his eyes. But that life also involved you, your love, your sacrifice, your strength. And by pushing away reminders of Dad's death, I pushed away you, the one person who loved me unconditionally. I felt my own tears starting. Mom, I don't expect you to forgive me right away. I don't even know if you can forgive me. But I need you to know that I'm going to spend however long it takes to become the son you raised me to be. To show you that the man who yelled at you isn't who I really am. Who are you really, Marcus? I'm your son. I'm Thomas Carter's son. I'm someone who was raised to value character over credentials, substance over status, kindness over cruelty. I forgot those lessons, but I'm going to remember them again. I promise. I looked at my son, this man who'd hurt me so deeply but who was now sitting in my living room, broken and genuinely remorseful. And I thought about grace, about forgiveness, about second chances. Okay, I said quietly.
Okay?
Okay, we can try. We can rebuild. But Marcus, if you ever speak to me that way again, we're done. Do you understand? I will not be disrespected in the name of keeping the peace. Not anymore. I understand. It will never happen again, I swear on Dad's memory. And you need to get counseling. Therapy. To figure out why you were so desperate to fit into Vanessa's world that you abandoned your own mother. I already made an appointment. First session is next week. Good. Over the following weeks, Marcus visited regularly. Not every day. I needed space and he needed to work on himself. But he called often. He asked about my life. He listened when I talked instead of interrupting or changing the subject. He started acting like my son again. Slowly, carefully, we began rebuilding our relationship. 2 months after the dinner party, Marcus invited me to lunch. We met at a small cafe near my house, not the fancy restaurant he would have chosen before, but a simple, comfortable place. Mom, I need to tell you something, he said after we'd ordered. What's that? The divorce is going through. Vanessa and I signed the papers yesterday. How do you feel about that? Relieved? Honestly, Once I started seeing clearly, I realized how toxic that relationship was. Not just toxic for me but for my relationships with everyone else, especially you. What happened with her partnership at the law firm? Marcus took a breath. She didn't get it. The partners told her she needed to work on her interpersonal skills and professional judgment. Apparently, several people from the dinner party spoke to James Whitfield about what happened. It counted against her. I'm sorry. Don't be. She brought that on herself, just like I brought my consequences on myself. We ate in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Marcus said, Mom, can I ask you something? Anything. Why didn't you ever tell me about your accomplishments, the awards, the wing named after you, the protocols you developed? Why did you keep all that quiet? I thought about how to answer. Because I didn't raise you to be impressed by titles and accolades. I raised you to value the work itself. The care I gave those children mattered. The families I helped mattered. The lives we saved mattered. The awards were nice, but they weren't the point. But I should have known what an amazing person my mother was. You did know, baby. You just forgot for a while. 3 months after the dinner party, Dorothy and I went to visit Metropolitan Children's Hospital. We walked through the Carter wing, looking at the photos on the wall of children we'd cared for over the years. So many faces, so many lives. A young woman in scrubs approached us. Excuse me, are you Mrs. Carter? Evelyn Carter? Yes, I am. Her face lit up. Oh my God, you're a legend here. I just started in pediatric oncology and everyone talks about you, about the Carter wing and everything you did. Can I shake your hand? I shook her hand, feeling touched. What's your name? Jessica. Jessica Thomas. I'm so honored to meet you. Jessica, thank you. Take care of those children. They're the reason we do this work. I will. I promise. As we walked away, Dorothy said, See? That's your legacy, Evie. Not the awards or the wing with your name on it. It's in the young nurses who are inspired by what you did. In the protocols that are still saving lives. In the children who survived because of the care you pioneered. She was right. That was what mattered. 6 months after the dinner party, Marcus introduced me to someone new. Her name was Jennifer, and she was a 4th grade teacher at a public school. She was kind, genuine, and warm. When Marcus brought her to my house for dinner, she complimented my home sincerely, helped me in the kitchen, and asked me real questions about my nursing career. Mrs. Carter, Marcus told me about your work in pediatric oncology. That must have been incredibly hard but also incredibly rewarding. It was both, every single day. I can't imagine the strength it takes to work with sick children, to care for them knowing some of them wouldn't survive. You find the strength because they need you too. Because their parents need you too. Because hope matters even when the outcome is uncertain. Jennifer's eyes filled with tears. That's beautiful, and it explains so much about Marcus. He's one of the most compassionate people I've ever met. He obviously learned that from you. After they left, I sat in my living room feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Hope that Marcus had found someone who valued the right things. Someone who wouldn't try to change him or make him ashamed of where he came from. A year after the dinner party, Marcus and Jennifer got engaged. The engagement was simple. He proposed at a family dinner at my house, with just the 3 of us present. Jennifer cried. Marcus cried. I cried. It was perfect. Mom, Marcus said after Jennifer had gone home that night. I need to tell you something. What's that, baby? I've been thinking a lot about the night of the dinner party. About what you said. About the person I became and the person you raised me to be. Okay. I'm not that person anymore. The person who yelled at you, who chose Vanessa's pride over your dignity, who was ashamed of where he came from. That's not me. Not anymore. I know, Marcus. I've seen the changes. But I need you to know that I'll never stop being grateful for what you did that night. You could have just walked out quietly. You could have taken the high road and said nothing. But you didn't. You stood up for yourself. You told the truth. You showed me exactly who I'd become. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done. I know, but it saved me, Mom. It saved me from becoming someone I would have hated. Someone Dad would have been ashamed of. He took my hand. I know I can never make up for those 3 years. For the missed birthdays and the forgotten calls and the disrespect. But I promise you, for the rest of my life, I'm going to be the son you deserve. The son you raised me to be. You already are, baby. You already are. 2 years after the dinner party, I attended Marcus and Jennifer's wedding. It was small, Just 50 people in a garden ceremony. Simple, beautiful, meaningful, everything a wedding should be. During the reception, Marcus stood to give a toast. I want to thank everyone for being here today to celebrate with Jennifer and me. But before we go any further, I need to say something important. The room quieted. 2 years ago I was married before that marriage ended because I'd become someone I didn't recognize. Someone who valued status over substance. Who cared more about appearances than authenticity. Who treated the people I loved with disrespect. He looked at me. Especially my mother. For 3 years I let my ex-wife disrespect my mom. I stopped visiting her. Stopped calling her. Stopped treating her like she mattered. And when my mom finally stood up for herself, I yelled at her. Threatened to throw her out of my house. Chose my wife's wounded pride over my mother's dignity. People were listening intently. My mom could have walked away from me forever. She would have been justified. But instead she gave me a chance to change. To grow. To become the man she raised me to be. His voice cracked with emotion. Mom, everything I am, everything good about me comes from you. You worked yourself to exhaustion to put me through college. You sacrificed everything so I could have opportunities. You taught me kindness, respect, gratitude, and integrity. And when I forgot those lessons, you reminded me in the strongest possible way. Thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for loving me even when I didn't deserve it. Thank you for being the kind of mother every child should have. I love you. The room erupted in applause. I was crying. Jennifer was crying. Everyone was crying. After the toast, people came up to me all evening to tell me what an amazing son I'd raised, and what an inspiration I was. It felt surreal, but good. That night, as the reception was ending, James Whitfield's daughter Amanda approached me. I'd met her earlier in the evening, and we'd had a lovely conversation. Mrs. Carter, I just wanted to thank you again, for everything you taught me, for showing me what it means to be a real healthcare provider. Amanda, you were always going to be a wonderful doctor. I just gave you a little guidance. You gave me everything that matters. And Mrs. Carter, I heard about what happened at that dinner party 2 years ago, about how you stood up for yourself and told the truth even when it was hard. You heard about that? My dad told me, and I want you to know that took more courage than anything I've ever done in medicine. Standing up for yourself when your own son and his wife were trying to diminish you. That's real strength. Thank you, sweetheart. I tell my students about you all the time, not just about your medical knowledge but about your character, about how you treated every child with dignity regardless of their background, about how you taught us that everyone deserves respect. You're my hero, Mrs. Carter. You always have been. Now 3 years after that terrible dinner party, I sit in my modest living room in my humble neighborhood and I think about how much has changed. Marcus visits me every week. He calls me every few days just to chat. He includes me in his life with Jennifer. They're talking about having children soon, and Marcus has already asked me to be involved as a grandmother. Our kids need to know their amazing grandma, he said. I volunteer at Metropolitan Children's Hospital twice a week, reading to the children in the Carter wing. The young nurses treat me with respect and ask me questions about the old days. I'm mentoring 2 young nurses who remind me of myself at their age. Passionate, dedicated, determined to make a difference. Dorothy and I have coffee every Thursday morning and we laugh about how far we've come. Pastor Morrison still checks on me regularly. Proud of how I stood up for myself while maintaining my faith and integrity. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Vanessa eventually made partner at her firm, but her reputation never quite recovered from the dinner party incident. She remarried someone from her parents' social circle. I wish her well from a distance. As for me, I'm at peace. I have my dignity intact. I have my son back. I have relationships built on mutual respect. And I have the satisfaction of knowing that when I was pushed to my breaking point, I chose truth over peace. I chose self-respect over approval. That night 3 years ago when my son yelled at me to get the hell out of his house, I could have apologized quietly and slunk away ashamed. I could have accepted the disrespect to keep the peace. Instead, I stood in that living room full of witnesses and I spoke my truth. I told them who I really was, not to brag but to correct a fundamental misunderstanding, to show that their judgments were based on ignorance and prejudice. I told them about the children I'd saved and the protocols I'd developed, and the lives I'd touched. I told them about the sacrifices I'd made and the love I'd given and the dignity I deserved. And in doing so, I didn't just defend myself, I taught my son a lesson he desperately needed to learn. That real worth isn't measured by wealth or status or designer clothes. It's measured by character, by sacrifice, by how you treat people when you have nothing to gain from treating them well. My son forced me to apologize to his rich wife because I'd upset her. When I refused, he yelled at me to get out. So I agreed to apologize, and I looked her in the eyes and told a truth that made their fancy life collapse in seconds. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, and the most necessary. Because sometimes love means standing up to the people you love. Sometimes it means drawing lines and demanding respect. Sometimes it means choosing truth over peace. And sometimes when you stand up for yourself with dignity and honesty, you not only save yourself, you save the person you're standing up to. I saved my son that night. I saved him from becoming someone he would have eventually hated. I saved him from a life built on shallow values and fake relationships. And in the process, I saved myself. I reclaimed my dignity. I remembered my worth. I refused to be small to make other people comfortable. That's the real story. Not revenge, but redemption. Not destruction, but transformation. Not the end of a relationship, but the painful, necessary rebuilding of one. My son came back to me, not because I demanded it or manipulated him, but because I showed him the truth and let him choose what to do with it. He chose wisely. Finally. And now, 3 years later, we're building something better than what we had before. A relationship based on mutual respect instead of obligation. On honesty instead of avoidance. On genuine love instead of guilt. It took standing in that living room and speaking truth to power. It took refusing to apologize for being right. It took choosing dignity over approval. But it was worth it. Every uncomfortable moment. Every painful truth. Every consequence. Because I'm nobody's doormat. Not even for the son I love more than life itself. I'm Evelyn Carter, head nurse of pediatric oncology for 17 years, recipient of the Lifetime Achievement Award, the woman who has a hospital wing named after her, the mother who sacrificed everything for her child. And I deserve respect. We all do. The end.